everyone, and welcome to Of Mushrooms and Men, a Last of Us podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris, and I'm joined by my good friend. He's a clicker who clickety-clacks all the way down the track, but not in this episode, because Is this a zombie show? Your friend and mine, Yashar.
Hey, Chris. I love zombies and how many of them there were in this episode.
None zombies.
We don't call them, first of all, we don't call them zombies. We call them the unvaccinated.
Sorry, I forgot. Right. They're trying to, now I get, the subtext is happening in real time. On this episode of Mushrooms and Men, we're going to be talking about the sixth episode of The Last of Us, HBO's latest adaptation of something that they didn't own to begin with. That episode is titled Kin. The episode aired February 19th, 2023. It is directed by Jasmila Zombanich, and it stars, once again, Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey, along with some new faces. We get to see Gabriel Luna finally. We get to see Elaine Miles, Graham Greene, and Rutina Wesley as well rounds out this episode's cast. And we finally get to see what Joel's brother has been up to since the last time we saw him, which was literally the first episode of this show. About halfway through the first episode, I guess 2/3 of the way through the first episode of the show was last time we got to see Mr. Gabriel Luna. But Joel and Ellie have finally made it to Wyoming, and we're about to find out a whole lot about what's been going on with his brother, the Fireflies, and everything else. So, Yashar, tell me what you thought of the latest episode of The Last of Us.
It's just like really good. And it's consistent, and the performances are good, and it's not that different from the game, which I know I keep saying, but that doesn't matter because it just has such like a good, strong foundation. And every time they do something that deviates or just adds a little bit of color to the world, like I really enjoy it. And it's like to the point that opening scene with Graham Greene and I forgot the actress's name, but like just add a little color to the world. And like also I like the emphasis that, people can live in this world and it's not all just dour. I mean, it sucks, but it's not just momentously, like moment by moment. Every moment is just absolute shit, misery porn type of like nihilistic existence that you see in a lot of other types of content. And not that The Last of Us hasn't had pockets of that, but it's nice when you get something a little different. So yeah, I mean, it's a great show. And I think the Joel and Ellie dynamic's really coming along a lot more. And we've been hitting on that the last few episodes, but I really don't have any complaints. I mean, maybe you want a bit more like action with the clickers, but I actually I didn't find myself thinking about them once outside of just the context of, what the environment of the show was.
Well, and what's interesting about that, as someone who, again, is playing the show or playing the game while watching the show, it's feeling more and more like the game parts of the game where you're actually doing things like fighting infected and people. It like now, like the quality of that in the game is obviously really good. It's really well done, right? Like The Last of Us is a really good third-person action adventure game. I think we would both agree. It's funny how much of all of that is just trappings in between things going on. It has never felt so much like that before, but in a way that I don't mind that it's just like, oh, by the way, if you were playing this, there would be things that are happening that you're not getting to do, like seeing them fighting infected, seeing them fighting more clickers. Like you have to assume that they've been fighting infected on their way to Wyoming this whole time.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe even bandits. But like, I mean, it hasn't been, there's no way it could have just been completely smooth sailing. Like we see Ellie now, Joel lets her carry a gun, right? That's like a big leap in the trust because the episode opens with, we see Sam and Henry's death.
Again,
were quite impactful.
Let's do this again, please.
I actually, at first I was like, oh, this is excessive. But then I was like, actually, it helped with the 3 months later to give some context of where we saw them last versus where they are now. I found that quite impactful.
I felt like the last episode's ending kind of undercut it, though. The way the last episode ended, where we have them actually on the other side of Sam and Henry and burying them, like in a lot of ways, I think it might have worked better if that had been the opening of this episode, so we could see kind of the aftermath. And the last episode, I think it would have been more successful if it had just cut with Henry killing himself, and then you see a little bit of the aftermath here, which allows you to give that moment a little bit more time to breathe, because it's jarring to have it open with a flashback and then it's like 3 months later. It's like, whoa, show. Yeah. Like, I think it would have worked narratively a little bit better. I mean, minor quibble, but just in the terms of if you're going to show us this again, it's a thing that, again, I'm not sure either one of us wanted to see again, but yet here we are. Yeah. And they're showing it to us again. Like, I think it would have worked better if instead of showing it to us again, it would have just put that conclusion of everything where they're burying them and we see the little, the payoff of the little thing that Ellie's been riding on. I think it would have worked a little bit better if that had been the beginning of this episode. And then we have them walking off because he saw her walking off at the end of the last episode. And it's this moment with Pedro Pascal kind of staring at her. I think it would have worked better if he had followed her and then it's 3 months later. And then it's this. Because again, like it's so abrupt the way this episode opens and it's really jarring. Like, and it was intended that way, clearly, but I just think narratively, I don't need to be bombarded with people killing themselves back-to-back times. Like it is just a little much. But that being said, like this episode's fine. I think it's fine.
I mean, it's a lot of setup, but it's important like character work.
Right. It's a very slow episode of this show in a way that is appreciated given that the last 2, even 3 episodes have been rather go, 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 go. And we're finally, okay, we're able to take a breath. They're able to eat a hot meal for the first time in forever. They're able to take a shower and all that. Like best we can tell, a lot of those things were not able to be achieved by them in the last 3 months. So it's nice to see them kind of get a moment of reprieve. Obviously, by the end of the episode, that's not the case, but I liked all the stuff in Jackson. It works. It doesn't feel unrealistic, because again, this show is hewing close to realism, which I appreciate because again, I mean, that's the thing I always think about with a zombie apocalypse. It's like all the things that would have to go bad so badly that we would all be gone. Like pockets of people finding a way to survive, people out in the middle of nowhere, not ever being bothered by zombies any more than they're being bothered by real people right now. Like, I think a zombie apocalypse maybe sounds more interesting than it would actually be because it would be more just like it is in The Last of Us, where it's like, just don't go to the cities. Like life has been changed in this world, obviously, in a substantive way. But I mean, if you look at what's going on in Jackson in this show, it's not different from probably the way people were living in Jackson before the fall happened.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because we saw this like other way to live, right? That's what Jackson showed us.
An actual sustainable way of living in this world past the fall of the cities. Again, not really humanity. There's so many people still alive.
Yeah, like we saw in the opening scene, like the best we've seen, like for an entire society is essentially like the Boston Fedra, which wasn't the best, but was okay.
Clearly better than most other ones, though.
Yeah, better than KC. It was cool. Like we see Joel finally reunite with Tommy. Diego Luna, was really effective as like sort of a bifurcation. Like Joel went this way and Tommy went the other way, where he like is hopeful and optimistic and looking for purpose, whereas Joel is just trudging along, actually like actively trying to avoid any attachments. And he lives in this society, and like the whole like commune part was quite funny.
Joel can't let it go, brother. Like, dude, it doesn't matter anymore. It cracked me up when Ellie's like, "Can I have some of that liquor?" And Joel's like, "No." It's like, dude, what? Who cares? Like, why? What? Like, what? What fucking?
I mean, you don't want a drunk like 14-year-old like.
Yeah, but like giving someone alcohol to warm them up is a thing, and it's the literal post-apocalyptic wasteland. Like I appreciated that little moment because again, like it's a moment that makes. I'm not chiding it for it not making sense. I'm appreciative that the writers of the show are giving us again continuing to reinforce that Joel is quickly becoming her father, because that's the response her father would have, not not just some adult that doesn't know her.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I mean, they're really like Joel is, that's why like the opening scene let's go back there. Ellie's holding a gun. Joel trusts her. Even the way Ellie talks, she's like a mini Joel. Like she's essentially taken on his characteristics over these last 3 months, and he's softened a little bit to her as well. And as Joel leaves that, he has, I think people think it's a heart attack, but it's like it was clearly a panic attack because he's feeling like overwhelmed at the thought of fucking up and losing her and messing up and making a mistake. And like it hasn't been all peaches and cream. Is that the phrase? Peaches
yeah.
It's like
that is the phrase, as weird as it is.
Yeah. And
what were you gonna say? Peaches and what were you gonna say? I wanted to know whatever the other word is you were kicking around.
Peaches and Kang.
Peaches and pea. It's not all peaches and pea out here.
But and then they go to Jackson, and that dog like could have just ended it there, and they just got lucky that the virus doesn't smell anymore. And Joel like once again kind of feels like I could have let her down, even though nothing he could have really done, right? But so it all culminates that when he's in this town that's functional and stuff, and he's like, Tommy is in some ways stronger than I am. I don't know if I can see this. Like, if I fail this again, like if I fail my daughter again, like I can't continue existing. Whereas like, if Tommy loses her, it would suck, but like Tommy would be fine. I mean, it's a bit selfish because Tommy does have like a family and now like a future child and stuff, but like they're really emphasizing that this attachment that Joel is made with Ellie is almost like paralyzing him. I don't know. What did you think about?
I felt like they introduced that too late. I feel like this should have been introduced 1 or 2 episodes earlier because I mean, you got to agree, it does come out of nowhere. All of a sudden, Joel's
3 months.
Right. I know, but that feels like a cop out now. If that's like all I'm saying is give us more of an idea that this is going to be a thing. And again, if Joel is externalizing it through dialogue, that's fine. But now it's like it's an internalization of his self. And it works, sure, but I wish they had kind of given us an idea that this was going to be a thing, or given us like a moment of this before to see it like kind of ramping up, less like, oh, it just happened, but more it's ramping up because we only have 3 episodes left at this point.
I think that Henry Sam was like the real turning. I mean, it was already getting there, right?
Sure. I mean, again, yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
But then like Henry and Sam reminded him of him and Ellie, and then obviously how that ended really cemented, I think, his arenas. I think there's like 2 key moments. One is Tess dying. He went from like, I just got to do this to like, oh, I'm doing this for her, for Tess. And then with Henry and Sam, he's like, no, like I'm actually doing this for Ellie. I am her protector, and I can't let the same thing that befell Henry and Sam befall her. And obviously they've gotten even closer in the past 3 months. And he's like, now he got from protector to father.
Right.
Like he's not going to say that. And she's like, he even says like, you're not my dad. Or whatever. And
the show has been so good and so subtle with its writing up until this point. It felt like something that a less well-written show would do. That's honestly how it feels. Does that make sense?
What, like
the whole like him like, oh, and like I don't need to see it's apparent what's going on here. Like that feels like it's for the benefit of someone who needs that to understand that explicitly. I don't know how else to put it. Like, I'm not trying to drag it, but it is a storytelling convention that has been used elsewhere. And I wasn't expecting this show to use it because this show is a rather well-written show that doesn't resort to typical storytelling conventions, right? That's more where I'm coming from.
No, I get that. And I guess like I think about it and I'm like, could we have, I think the conversations he and Ellie had were important, but yeah, did we need to see him have a panic attack? Probably not. Like I would have found it just as effective, but also like I do have the context of the game. So I'm probably not the most objective observer of these things.
Have you seen Ted Lasso?
I am Ted Lasso, an American living in England.
Okay. That doesn't make you Ted Lasso. That makes you. You also, you have a mustache.
Okay. Led Tasso.
Yeah, you're Led Tasso. Led Tasso,
yeah.
I only ask that because remember Ted Lasso, the first episode of that show, when he goes into the press conference, you start to see the inkling of the panic attack that character has.
Yeah.
And again, like I get that they're motivated by different things, but Joel had lost his daughter at the beginning of the show effectively. Like by the end of the first episode, his daughter has passed away, and that is something weighing heavily on him. It's still this is something that I feel like just one subtle introduction of this specific, oh, I'm having a heart attack or whatever it's supposed to look like. That just should have been something that should have been mentioned or done one other time. Because again, where we are now, it's like, okay, like again, I haven't gotten to this point in the game. This is not a thing that happens in the game, is it?
The panic attack, I don't think so. But like there is the time jump. I think there is. I don't know if it's 3 months, but there's a time jump. They go to Jackson. They actually don't. So they spend time in Jackson, which they don't in the game. They do more just like helping fix some stuff, which I think actually apparently was for budgetary reasons in the game. But it was cool. I actually like that change. Is like we have to spend some time in this, like I said, lived in place where people are watching movies, they're sharing things, no one's killing each other. Like things work, and it's like a nice
300 plus people is what they said.
Yeah, something like that. They got a school, they have religion, but like, non-violent, and like everyone's just like getting along. And so yeah, this was like generally following the footsteps of the game and going to Eastern Colorado, but once again they stopped to spend a bit more time with the world outside of Ellie and Joel. And obviously we needed to see Tommy and, get that linkage together as well.
Well, and I was going to say, that's the thing that works for me is the slowing down of the narrative, really letting us see not the rest of the world, but the way another portion of the world is living. Because we saw it in Kansas City. We saw the Kansas City yo-yos. We saw the people underneath Kansas City who were living in the Kansas City sewers. And now we're seeing people that are effectively living, in the far northern reaches of our country. Like, again, like they're living out in not in the wilderness, but like Jackson is in Wyoming, and Wyoming is a state with not a whole lot. And I appreciate that about the show. Cause yes, it makes sense in the narrative of the game, but the fact that the show runners, obviously one of them being Neil Druckmann, recognize that I think it still works. Cause again, they changed it from Pittsburgh to Kansas City. So they could have changed it to somewhere else, but Jackson is such a big part of the second game as well. Yeah. I think there's no way to get around it, but I like that this show has already put us in Jackson and seeing things there, because I know in the game it doesn't, obviously, like you said. That's the second game, a lot of stuff in Jackson.
And then, I think this emphasizes why Joe Biden's infrastructure plan is really important, because, post-zombie apocalypse, you got to have the water dams working.
I like that. I like how they somehow managed to tap into the electricity just somehow. We did.
Well, I'm using hydropower, so
sure. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, But so you like the whole Jackson piece, and did you like the interactions with how'd you felt Diego Luna?
Gabriel Luna, you mean?
Gabriel Luna.
Diego Luna. I think that's a different person.
Andor.
That's Andor, dude. I haven't seen Gabriel Luna in a lot of stuff, to be honest with you. I think we've talked about this privately about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, which you kind of. Yeah,
I'm all in.
Yeah, I get it. I've seen that. I've seen Terminator: Dark Fate, so that's the last time I saw him. Yeah, he sure is. Unfortunately for him and everybody else who was involved in that movie. He's fine. I mean, again, the character that he's playing is just kind of a Joel, but in a different angle of Joel. He's very similar, obviously, because he's his brother. And I like that he's a more even-keeled character. But again, we've only seen him in one episode, so we don't know how even-keeled of a character he is. Best we can tell, he has kind of gone straight, as you would call it, in current day parlance, because he's not robbing people and smuggling anymore. He's living a communal life with all these people. And I think he's fine. I like his interaction with Rutina Wesley. I think they're good. I like Graham Greene and Elaine Miles. I wish there had been more of them, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, again, Graham Greene is such a recognizable presence and such a fantastic actor, and they gave him 5 lines, and him and Elaine Miles kill it. Honestly, this episode is really good from a casting and character interaction standpoint. Ultimately, if you were someone watching the show, you'd probably be and you were expecting there to be things happening, you might be like, this is a boring episode. And I would understand where you're coming from, but this show needs these kinds of episodes, and I'm glad that this episode is essentially just a bunch of conversations being had in nondescript rooms. That's really what it boils down to.
And what did you think about Ellie, especially when they were at dinner or lunch, whatever, in Jackson, how aggressive and abrasive she is? Like I mentioned before, she's really taking on more of Joel's persona. And is it because she thinks that's the way to be? I mean, part of it, she probably doesn't fully trust these new people, but she has this new, fierceness, and I think she's really trying to model herself after what she thinks Joel will find impressive.
Well, and I also think it's interesting that, you hear Rutina Wesley's character say this isn't the way people here talk.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me because, again, it shows just Ellie is a different person because of the journey she's gone on with Joel. She, again, for all intents and purposes, when we initially meet her, she's kind of a smart ass, but not Joel amplifies it, right? I think we both agree. He amplifies personality traits of hers that are now at the forefront. And I think that obviously with what the next episode is, we're going to see, you know, where this is all starting from. Man, we were right. Like, it's not surprising what the next episode is. Like,
I saw the name of the episode, and I was like, oh, okay. I was like,
we called it. Like, I mean, right? There's gonna be the flashback episode. Like,
spoilers, but I mean,
but not really. Like,
almost indicates that it's almost certain to be based on the DLC, which has a heavy flashback component.
But I think it's going to be interesting how they contrast this version of Ellie, the most almost fully formed version of this age Ellie. Because again, Last of Us 2 has a more adult Ellie. The Last of Us 1 is more of a teenage Ellie. I think it will be interesting to see what the original character was like when she was, you know, in this flashback, this extended flashback episode that we're going to see.
Yeah. And she was, you know, not that much younger than when Joel met her, but it was like purely just her without the influence of him.
Right. And not as hardened as she's going to be.
Yeah. And I think that will be an interesting showcase for the actress. And then we also
really like Bella Ramsey, by the way.
She's grown on me. I think the first couple episodes, I was like, she's obviously not bad, but I wasn't particularly taken with her performance. I'd say the last few episodes have really warmed me up to her, Ellie. And I mean, Pedro Pascal's been amazing. He's been really emotive too the last few episodes, like with his face, and like it's got this quiet intensity. But I think we all know he can act quite well. Like,
really,
like, it's not.
Well, at least when we can see his face.
So I mean, just because you're a good actor doesn't mean it shouldn't be noted when you're doing a good job. But I think it's just less surprising. Like, it was more expected. So it's not, his performance isn't particularly surprising. Whereas Bella Ramsey, so I'm like, okay, like she can do more than just be like the badass from Game of Thrones. Like she's got some range, and she can do some interesting character beats, and she's changed, like episode by episode, she's changing a little bit. So yeah, I really like that. And then obviously
did you not see The Worst Witch on Netflix? That's the real Bella Ramsey showcase.
The what?
The Worst Witch. It's a Netflix series based off of a children's book from the 90s that bears a striking resemblance in a lot of ways to the plot, setup, and world of Harry Potter. And no, I'm not joking. She goes to a school where they're like sorted into houses, and there's a teacher that's antagonistic towards her. It's like, look, J.K. Rowling, everybody has an opinion on J.K. Rowling these days, and that's J.K. Rowling's fault. But Bella Ramsey is the lead in that show, where she's...
Dude, this show went for 4 seasons.
Yeah, I'm well aware. I'm well aware. She's actually pretty good in that show. Like, she's a good part of a bad show. And to your point, if she had never been in this show, she would literally probably forever be known as the character you mentioned, the girl from Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
I forget what house is she? I forget what house.
I don't know, but she gets like eaten by a giant or something.
No, she doesn't get eaten by a giant.
She gets like she gets killed in the.
She gets
killed.
Battle. Wow, should we ruin Game of Thrones? I mean, nobody cares anymore.
I mean, she's a cool character, but she's hardly consequential.
I mean, again, like, but she's memorable to the point where one of the reasons she's in this show is by the strength of the performance in that show, because Mazin and Druckmann reached out to Benioff and Weiss about working with Bella Ramsey. Because again, and we haven't really mentioned this on the show, and I think we should mention it. You know what the initial plan was for The Last of Us, right?
The show or the game?
The game was in the process of being adapted into a movie. When Craig Mazin saw that it was and reached out to Neil Druckmann through, of all people, Shannon Woodward of Westworld, which makes me happy that Westworld exists in a lot of ways. But I think Mazin and Woodward had worked on, or Druckmann and Woodward had worked together because she does the voice for somebody in The Last of Us. Yeah,
she's in, I think she's Nina, right? Or Dina, who's
in the second one.
Who's like a very important character for Ellie. And Craig Mazin, it was a coincidence. It was like Craig Mazin approached Druckmann
and was like, "Hey, they're turning this into a movie. I think it should be a TV show." And then I guess he was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." Which is like, here's the thing. Like, I do want to mention this because we kind of haven't talked about it. This show would not have worked as a movie. There's no, like, the game would not have worked as a movie because it would have to be like 3.5, 4 hours long. Like, it would have been 2 movies essentially.
Yeah, or kind of like, do they?
The intermission would have been the 3-month jump.
Let's jump, yeah.
Right. So like, and maybe that could have worked, but giving the characters all this time, I think is more what I'm getting at, because this episode is really an hour of people just talking. And I really appreciated it because, again, like I think the expectation a lot of people have with this show is it's a zombie show. There's going to be zombie shit. It's just like The Walking Dead.
There's no zombies in the show, bro.
I know.
It's not a zombie show.
I know, but it is a zombie show. It is a zombie show for 9 out of 10 people. That one person that's the gamer gets it. But again, it's a zombie show for anybody else because that's the expectation. And if you sit down and watch the show, that is going to be completely, your expectations are going to be obliterated immediately. And that still, for me, is being done in this episode. I was not expecting this episode to grind the momentum of the show to a halt. And it did. And it actually succeeded in doing so, which is a feat in and of itself. Because when shows do stuff like this, a lot of people are just like, well, I'm not into this anymore. Or these aren't very, or the writing can't live up to what they're trying to do.
And they also amped it. I mean, so let's talk about the Eastern Colorado part. So obviously, as we mentioned, Joel tries to get Tommy to take Ellie because he doesn't want to like fuck up. He can't handle it, basically.
He can't handle if Ellie dies.
Yeah. And he's like, if it happens kind of off screen, it's better than, if I'm responsible for it, or like, I think you're younger and stronger and your head's on more straight, you can get the job done where I can't. And he even convinces Tommy to do it. And Tommy's willing to sacrifice that for him after like a few tense conversations about like, Joel not able to overcome the loss of his daughter. But, Joel eventually tells Ellie, like, you have a choice. Obviously, she's going to choose Joel every time. And they head to Eastern Colorado University where the Fireflies clearly are not. But they're like, let's do some digging, see where they went. You have some potentially rabid monkeys. I don't know. Something weird's going on with them.
They were escaped from the lab where they were being tested. Sure.
Yeah,
I mean, why not, right? CGI monkeys. I'm never going to complain about CGI monkeys.
Yeah.
CGI baboons, to be more...
Caesar is home.
Wow. So, now that's the crossover nobody knew they wanted. Yeah, The Last of Us and Planet of the Apes.
I mean, I could see that.
There it is. That's what the cordyceps only infects humans and the monkeys take over after.
Yeah. So then, they go and they see, obviously, the Fireflies, for whatever reason, have gone to Salt Lake City, which is kind of where I think climax of the game show is going to happen because that'll be the finale.
But that's a different place than where it takes place in the game, yeah?
I think it was.
Isn't it in Seattle? I thought it was Seattle.
No, Seattle's 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 2 takes place. I think so. I could be wrong, but I'm almost certain Salt Lake City is. It doesn't matter. Anyway.
I mean, look, we're almost at the end of the show anyway.
Yeah, so
if it's not Salt Lake City, then it's somewhere else. But like best we can tell, that's the show is in this last 3 episodes. So
yeah, 2. No,
I thought the show has 8 or
7, 6. Oh yeah, with 7, 8, 9. Yeah, you're right.
There's 3 left. Yeah,
okay.
But technically 2. The next episode is going to be like. I mean, if the next episode is not an entire episode as a flashback, I'll be surprised.
I think I'll be interested to see how closely it strays to the DLC, because the DLC, for people that don't know, some is in the present, like takes place right after the end of this episode, and some is like a flashback. I don't know how much of that they'll get into, but and then they see some bandits. Joel gets ganked by one, and he's obviously they're in the winter. Ellie earlier in the episode says like, I'd be fucked without you, or I'd be dead without you, or something like that. Like, cause she realizes like, even though she's relatively competent, like from an emotional perspective and an actual physical survival perspective, she cannot continue without Joel. At least she doesn't think she can in a world like this. And she's not a survivalist. So it's going to be interesting to see how they balance. Like, I mean, I think we can all probably go on a limb and say Joel's probably not going to die in the next episode, but he's not doing well, and she probably can't ride all the way back to Jackson in the cold. She probably doesn't even know how to get to Jackson. So, like, it puts her in an interesting spot where, like, this is the first time she's going to really have to like be more than just a Joel clone, but she's going to have to be Joel for them.
Right. And I don't know where it goes past here. Again, I didn't really know much of this episode because I have been negligent on my game playing. But the cliffhanger in this episode feels very much like the cliffhanger at the end of that episode where Henry and Sam were pointing the gun at Ellie and Joel. It's like, I appreciate what the narrative is attempting to do, but you haven't tricked me into thinking Pedro Pascal's character is going to die. I get it from like a ratcheting up of the tension for the people who don't know the narrative, but nobody who's played the game or knows the game would think that the main character of the game would die in this episode. Like,
But I do think it's maybe it does ratchet up like, okay, but what are they going to do? Like, obviously,
that's more interesting.
He's obviously not just going to be fine. So,
right.
I mean, something has. So it's, I guess, like that is the thing, is like we know something has to, like,
but we both know the show is trying to bait us into thinking Joel is dead. I mean,
I don't.
Look, that's not me or you doing it. It's the show doing it. Like, that's fine. Like, whatever. I get it.
I'd be surprised if the average viewer left that and be like, oh, he's dead. I think it's more of like, okay, they're in a bad situation. How are they going to get out of this?
Right. It's these like minor flourishes on the show where it's like, I'm still wondering if they trust their audience. Like, because again, like they don't want to assume everybody knows the narrative. That's what this is. And I get it. Like I'm on board with that, because again, this is a very deft balancing act that Mazin and Druckmann have been doing with this show by keeping the people who know the narrative engaged, by adding and building to a world that they've been building on already in 2 games, while also changing things in a way that's not going to, again, not that it matters if you piss off the fans, and it shouldn't matter, piss off the fans, but also stay true to the narrative as it was told. This is a very deft balancing act that they're doing, and they're succeeding. And until they stop succeeding, the show will continue to be very good. I get why they do some of these kind of dorky little things, but these dorky little things that they do, they're doing it for a different subsection of the audience for the show. And I can 100% appreciate it and get it. Because again, like if you're a video game player, you're just going to keep playing. Like there is no stop here. Like this was not, let me put it this way. This isn't the end of the game. If you're playing the game. So this moment in the game is being used for something differently than it is in the show. But because of, again, expectations, this is the way they do it.
Actually, there is sort of a similar transition in the game where Ellie becomes more of a focal point.
Sure.
So it does serve that purpose. Like as we were kind of seeing, she is now the the one that's steering. She's the one that's driving. Maybe not forever, but
they put his death they put his death scene at the end of an episode. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think I don't know.
Look,
I would be surprised.
You get what I'm
getting. If more than 5% of people watching the show thought he was dead. Like
again,
I don't think.
But again, I just appreciate that it exists in the show, because to me it shows that Mazin and Druckmann understand that there are people watching this that do not know the narrative. Like, look, if I have told my folks to watch this show because I think they would enjoy it, because again, it is somewhat Mandalorian adjacent in a lot of ways. It's like a more mature version of the Mandalorian, frankly.
I mean, she's Baby Yoda, and he's him without a helmet.
Right.
He's Pedro Pascal who shows up to the set.
Not his body double.
Not his body
double. But
anyways,
if someone like that is watching the show who doesn't know the narrative at all, like that's who that's for, 100%. And like that audience does exist, and that's why this show has been so successful, is because it can bridge the gap between the two. And most of the time, video game things don't even bridge the gap for one. They're not even successful at being entertaining for a commonplace, normal Friday night going audience versus someone who's, a Sonic the Hedgehog player since Sega Genesis came out. Like the Sonic movie in a lot of ways is very similar to this. It balances the two. It gives people who know the narrative something interesting and different, and people who don't something exciting that they've never seen before. But it's hard to make the two work at the same time.
I'd argue it's, even darker.
Wow. I like those Sonic movies.
They're great.
I haven't seen the second one. I haven't seen the second one, good. But the first one's real good.
Second one's really good. Jim Carrey is just...
Yeah. He could retire after those movies and be good. Like, I don't think he has anything else left to say.
No,
it's his best villain role. Like, it's the best villain he's played.
And it's like pure Carrey. Like it's like when you think of Prime Carrey, like his Robotnik performances are just...
It's literally Ace Ventura adjacent. It's all... I mean, it's like Jim Carrey...
The Mask...
Right. It's like he did that thing from the 90s one more time. Like that's what it feels like, because he hadn't done it for fucking 15 years. Like I don't remember the last movie he did where it was like that brand of Jim Carrey. Even his comedies, like he wasn't necessarily as over the top. Right. And look, like, again, like we've talked about video game stuff on this show, but, and again, I think it kind of bears maybe talking about a little bit. You and I are video gamers from long. Like you had them growing up. I grew up around them because of you more than anybody else.
I actually was told by my doctor in the C-section I was playing Pong on the way out.
You would have been playing Super Nintendo, dingus. We weren't born in the 70s. Why would you be playing Pong when there were so many other options in 1990?
Like, I'm not asking questions why there was a Pong system.
You could have had a Game Boy in there. Almost a Game Boy Color. You could have had a Game Boy Color in the womb. But that's one of the things that you and I have bonded over as friends forever. I mean, forever, literally. I can't, of the things I think of when I think of my friendship and your friendship, comic books, video games, and movies, like our pop culture reference points are very similar. If we not necessarily agree on all the quality of things, but if you can quote something to me, I will know what you're talking about for the most part.
I'm a cop, you idiot.
Yeah, like shit like that. Like that for me is, again, like video games are a big part of the pop culture makeup of the things that I like, because I still am a pretty avid gamer. I game fairly frequently. And it's not just multiplayer stuff. It's a lot of single player stuff like The Last of Us. Because again, I feel like, and I think you would agree, stuff like The Last of Us is more a movie, even less than a game. I mean, it's an interactive movie and it's a well-made game, but like the narrative is, ultimately the gameplay has to just get me to the next cutscene in a lot of ways. Like, and if I want to go back through and replay it and do more things, that's on me, New Game Plus stuff. But with something like The Last of Us or God of War, I'm actively invested in the story, and the gameplay should be good because I don't want to be bored in between cutscenes. But you could watch The Last of Us as a movie, the game, and those cuts exist on YouTube. I mean, that's like 18 hours because you do have to watch some video game playing footage to understand the context of other stuff. But I mean, again, I feel like more people would be into video games if there was less of a hurdle to actually playing them. Do you know what I mean?
Like, as in getting the actual system, or you mean
the act of playing
the time? I guess.
Well, and the act of playing video games is hard. Like some people just don't have the not skills, but like the timing.
Chris, are you?
No, I like some people just
are stupid.
No, some people are. Some people are not.
They're too stupid.
Good at video games. Let me put it this way: a game like The Last of Us 1 and 2, along with a lot of games coming out, have a narrative difficulty that is effectively difficulty 0, so that someone who doesn't want to die over and over again, like in The Last of Us, grounded difficulty would, can play the game and essentially enjoy the cutscenes with gameplay in between. Is that not what narrative difficulty is?
I mean,
pretty much, right?
I guess I've definitely seen that in games, especially story-driven games, where it's like you're not going to die much. It's going to be like a pretty simple experience as far as
no difficulty because that's not the point.
Yeah.
But Last of Us has that.
I honestly don't remember, but I believe you. I think that we're not trying to belabor the point that just there's the adaptation part that I think has been difficult is around execution, not around like ideation.
No, because video games are made essentially on both.
Well, this one was.
Well,
no, I'm saying this one was.
Sure, but like a lot of video game adaptations that are good succeed in both camps. The ones that people are kind of, the original Mortal Kombat, right? I don't think in execution that movie's very great, but I think that they stay true enough to the idea of the game that it's entertaining, right? Like, like they have a combat tournament. There's Liu Kang and Shang Tsung, characters you recognize doing things you recognize. It's not the best movie though, because there's some things that are hard to do with a movie where it's just a bunch of people fighting over and over again. I get it. But at least in the 90s. But I mean, here the execution and the idea are so strong that like the game was so good on its own that again, this is a game, but it's already a movie. Already a movie.
Agreed. I think we were just kind of saying we both really like the episode. We're excited to see what goes next. It seems like next episode's probably a flashback.
Then the whole thing's going to be a flashback, probably.
Yeah, we'll see. And I will say we've gotten to the point where there isn't it did seem like there was going to be some sort of flashback mechanism in every episode. Like that's it. There's not. It doesn't seem like they have a template. Like I will probably see more flashbacks just generally, but I don't think it's like, oh, it has to be this every episode, which I think has its pros and its cons. Like I do like seeing those things, but also it kind of gives them the flexibility to tell the story they want to tell in that hour they have every week. So
I kind of miss them because again, they were fun. They were fun, right? Like they were some of the better things we've seen, like the John Hannah stuff, the stuff in Indonesia. It was fun. Like I like that because again, if you've played the game, that's stuff that you have not seen at all. Like that is completely 100% removed from the game. And that's a show. I mean, again, like you want to do another show, you could do a show of that. and you know what, they probably will, given that this show has been so successful, a prequel
season
show.
two's already been
right.
Oh,
but they like a prequel show to The Last of Us that takes place in the 20 subsequent years. Because, dude, that's so long. Like, that's a long TV show that you could do.
Can't wait to see the first of them.
Oh my God. Oh,
I'm here, Craig Mazin. You can have that one. Just give me like a little writing credit.
I mean, HBO is doing the thing with the It movies, where they're doing
what are they doing with that?
A like stories from Derry, Maine, because in the book there's chapters in between of like, this is what's been going on in the city. Like, well, it's more like history of the city too. But like they could do any time. Yeah, I'm gonna watch it too, because I read it last year, and that was some of the best parts of the book, was the world building, less the like big conflict at the center of it. And
did you enjoy the orgy after they defeated the clown?
I mean, it made sense in the book, but I'm not going to condone it. It makes sense in the book because the book is very different. The book is fun. It's fine. It's definitely the most Stephen King-y book I've ever read. It's the most self-indulgent thing I've ever read. I haven't read Infinite Jest, but like it is up there for just like one guy who goes, all right, every character needs a backstory, and I'm going to give each character as a backstory like 5 pages. And it's like, Jesus Christ, dude, this book has like 70 characters. Some dude pumping gas at a gas station gets like 5 pages of like explanation.
That's funny.
But again, that's like Dickensian, which is Stephen King. And that's what I appreciate about this. And that's why it's like, to make a joke that they could do a Last of Us prequel show. They totally could. This world is like so well thought out. And the goalposts are rather wide because, again, like they've already established different kinds of living situations that people can have. You can have all kinds of stuff in that 20 years in between. And honestly, like I would be totally interested because, yes, this narrative is fun, but in a lot of ways, this is like the Skywalker shit from Star Wars. Like this stuff is interesting, but everything else happening in the world is probably a lot more fun. But this is it's like the Jon Snow thing in Game of Thrones. Like the House of Dragon stuff is a lot more fun because it's not the end-all be-all conflict. The Last of Us feels like the end-all be-all conflict of this universe, does it not?
I mean, it is about the Lannisters, though, and like the Lannisters, obviously, like
right,
are like the Skywalkers of Westeros.
What are you? Oh,
but not the Lannisters, the Targaryens.
Yeah. But not really, because Jon Snow is the Skywalker of Game of Thrones.
Jon Snow is a Targaryen.
Bro. I know, but again, like that's something
about his ancestors.
I know, but it ends up being less about Jon Snow. But again, now it does feel like more about Jon Snow because we're getting a Jon Snow TV show.
Yeah.
Right. Which, like, again, like I can't help but wonder. I honestly can't help but wonder. And this is what they're gonna do. Fucking quote me on this shit. The Ice King or the Night King is gonna come back somehow in the fucking Jon Snow show. And it's because there's no way that George R.R. Martin isn't doing what he's doing in the House of the Dragon show, knowing that a Jon Snow show is coming, where he could just say, well, that wasn't actually the end all threat because whatever the next threat is gonna be as big or bigger, right? It can't not be.
Well,
and that's a cop-out, but fuck that show. Fuck Game of Thrones season 8. It was so bad. If they want to redo it by doing a Jon Snow show, fucking do it.
Wait, Chris, you dislike Game of Thrones season 8? I don't think
our listeners have ever heard this. I don't think our listeners
ever heard this. Anyway, Dave Simon is doing the Jon Snow season. It's going to be in 1970s Baltimore, and it's actually called Jon's Snow. He's going to be...
Is this like The Wire? This is a prequel to The Wire. It's a prequel to The Wire and Hannibal.
Yeah. So he's just going to be...
But again, like
yellow tops, red tops,
like
whatever
ultimately with a lot of these things that are adaptations, this is a very fine line. Because even with House of the Dragon, again, you had people that knew the narrative and people that didn't, and people who knew it were going to be bored theoretically because it's and then. But that show ends up being super entertaining too. So I think the most impressive thing right now is HBO is like operating at full capacity. It's horrifying.
But HBO's always executed like it. I mean, at least in our lifetimes, it's basically been known for like they don't really have creative lulls or like.
Game of Thrones is it being so bad in the season 8 was a big deal for HBO.
No, it was a big deal, but it's not to say HBO's never produced like a bad season, but holistically,
but like of a show completely.
I mean, I'm sure there's been bad episodes. Like there's, I mean, I don't buy it, but there's certain people that didn't like season 2 of The Wire.
I've never seen The Wire. It's on my list of things to watch. Hey man, you've never seen The Sopranos, brother. Like, don't be fucking shaking my head. The Sopranos and The Wire are 1A and 1B. Like,
I know. Okay.
If I ask you your favorite show, you're gonna say The Wire, right?
No, The Leftovers, another HBO special.
Boy, what? That's a real deep cut. I figured that would be yours. Every time I see it, I think of you. I've never watched it.
Dude,
another post-apocalyptic thing.
Sort of. It changed. Like, it is the closest to a religious experience I've had while watching a TV show. Like,
interesting.
It's unbelievable. And it's actually based on...
You know what? We should cover it. When we're done with this, it's like, what, 6 episodes? It's one season, right?
No, it's 3 seasons.
What? I thought it was only 1.
No, so it was it's based on a book of which the first season covers. Seasons 2 and 3 were consulted with the writer, but actually, like Game of Thrones, went totally different things.
Right.
But like, were actually better reviewed. I mean, the first season was quite well reviewed. The first season is super, super depressing, which is why a lot of people which is why some people didn't really resonate. It's like too oppressive. But seasons 2 and 3 are a bit more optimistic, a little different, and like are pretty much universally acclaimed.
So to bring this back to The Last of Us, do you think they're going to make any substantial changes to the narrative moving forward? Because this is where this becomes tricky.
No, I think even Druckmann and Mazin have kind of said, like, it's the first game. Like, like the changes we've made are to really make the world a little better, or just to take advantage of the fact that you don't have to be like killing things all the time. But entertaining
someone in that way.
I don't think the big story beats are going to be that different. I mean, we'll see. We'll see the splashback episode that I think is based on the DLC and
But again, they could, right? Like, again, the second season. Let me ask you a different question then. Do you think the second season of this show is going to be the second game?
I think. I think we got confirmation the end of this season will be the end of the first game.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be at this point.
A bit broader in scope. I could see them splitting that into 2 seasons, but maybe not. Maybe they could do it in 1 season, but my guess is I think I know where they're going to end season 2. We can talk about that later.
I think I know as well. I think I know as well where they end season 2. Again, if you know the narrative, you know the narrative. Like, you can't escape. You can't. If you know anything about The Last of Us 2, what we're talking about ties in directly to how people felt about that game. To the point of, I guess, people not playing that game after about the 1/3 point, which is
and then there's the whole like Abby character and just people,
which is where even more people checked out. Apparently, I get it, and you know what?
I wonder if we'll see Abby,
dude. As I was gonna say, I'm calling it right now. The after credit scene is gonna be introducing Abby. It's going to be something. It's going to be her getting the news of what transpires at the end of the first game.
Abby is a major character in The Last of Us Part 2 she's not really in Part...
You never see her physically.
But another Last of Us Part 2, I listened to an interview with Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, and they said the girl that was like kind of creeping on Ellie was... they didn't officially confirm, but I think like maybe Dina, who becomes a very important character for Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2, and we actually never see it in Part 1. So like they can do little nuggets like that to flesh out. And like you said, even Jackson, we knew it was in Last of Us Part 1, but doesn't really play a big part of the narrative until Last of Us Part 2. But it's like, why not? Like,
they kind of incorporated the second game into the first episode or season of the show.
Yeah. So like these things, I think, serve a purpose, and even if they're little nuggets like the Dina thing, like it's cool, and it connects the stories a bit better. So yeah, we'll see how the finale ends, and if we get a bit more. I mean, I don't
think we're not going to. If they again, and that's why I said, like, do you think it's going
like,
to be?
Have they cast her? Have they? Because that's a big casting decision.
Sure. So again, like, they don't have to announce they cast someone for a cameo scene, though. Like, I'm thinking it will be like literally like a like cameo-esque thing, like a Marvel Studios type thing, where it's like her turned her back to the camera, and someone comes up to her and hands her a note or something. Like, and she turns around, it's like shocked face, and it's like people who know and people who don't understand the connections that are going on.
Mr. Stark.
Right. Also want to mention something that we haven't gotten to mention. Bella Ramsey is gender fluid, and I find that awesome. And I'm really glad that HBO has 2 shows now with gender fluid.
Who's the
actor who plays the Targaryen on House of...
yeah. The I can't remember her name.
I forget their name. Yeah.
We're so bad. I guess it's not this show, so it's okay that we forgot it.
They're the best part of that show. So
yeah.
And Bella, I mean, look, like I want to mention this before we end this episode. I like Pedro Pascal. I think what he's doing in this episode is the best Joel we've seen so far in this show. But yeah, to bring it all the way back to Bella Ramsey. I cannot wait to see a second and third season of this show, especially if they give it a little bit of time for her to age up a little bit more.
And I mean, not that it's like a huge part, but she probably needs to bulk up a little bit.
She's gonna get yoked, brother. She's gonna be yoked in season 2 and 3 of this fucking show.
It'd be funny if she's just like fucking jacked.
Hey, Joel. Oh my God, Ellie. It's a side effect of the vaccine. She's just like, she can crack a fucking clicker's head in between her arms. Fuck yeah, dude. No,
I will say though, when I've seen Bella Ramsey like outside of being Ellie, like she definitely does. I mean, she does look young for her age, but she does look older than she's playing in this show.
Yeah.
So like with them probably dressing her more age appropriately of her actual age, plus her aging in real time, I think it will be a bit less jarring.
And you know what they say? Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey are technically the same age as Leonardo DiCaprio and his girlfriend right now. So, ayo, everybody. That's some slash fiction the world didn't need.
Wait.
It's getting cold out here. It's getting cold out here, Joel. Can I use your sleeping bag? Down, down, down. Da-da-da-da-da-dang. I'm talking about Last of Us 2, not the first one. Jesus.
Oh, man. I'm stuck in a mushroom. Come help me.
Yeah, come help me, stepdad.
Joel.
Oh, Step Joel. Ugh, that already exists. This is not something we're creating. This exists already, which is just, just great. Thanks to the internet.
I actually had never thought about this ever before this moment, Chris.
You're welcome. I don't know how the fuck you didn't.
I've somehow avoided.
That's not my fault. That's your own fault for not going through that derivation in your head, because
it just never crossed my mind. Never.
Well, Leonardo DiCaprio and his girlfriend are this age, 46 and 19. Is that what it is?
47 and 19. Yeah.
Whatever. I'm not yucking anybody's yum, but Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey together, that's a no for me, dog.
I don't know if you're seeing Chris, you are not allowed to write the next season of The Last of Us.
If it wasn't called The Last of Us, it should be called The Rest of Us, because these people shouldn't exist after what's going on out in the fucking wilderness.
Oh,
Jesus Christ. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Mushrooms and Men. We'll be back on the next episode to talk about
this is how we get canceled.
Canceled by who? The Mushroom Police?
The Vax.
Oh, Big Vax.
Big Vax.
So we'll be coming back next episode to talk about Left Behind, the 7th episode of the first season of The Last of Us. And like we've already mentioned, it is a flashback episode. So Ellie all day, every day, baby, which, you know what? Hey, I think at this point I'm game. So we'll see. Until then, you can find Yashar and I over at weirdingwaymedia.com, which is the podcast network that the Projection Booth Mike White and I co-founded as a repository and suppository for all the fun things that we work on together.
Yum, yum.
Yum, yum. As for this show of Mushrooms and Men can be found on iTunes and all other podcast streaming platforms. Like, rate, and review the show. That helps us out, and that helps our clicker friends find you a lot quicker. Until then, you can find Yashar and I there, and we'll catch you on the next episode.